So everyone's freaking out now about the Florida election, and rightfully so, because something stinks out of Broward County. And I actually made a list out of all the sketchy things that have happened in Broward County over the last year or two that nobody seems to care about or want to talk about until now. So basically, Rick Scott won the election, Ron DeSantis won the election. I believe Gillum and the other guy, what was his name? Nelson? I believe they already rescinded and, stepped down or whatever the word is when they, concede. They conceded already, I believe. But 2 or 3 days after the election, all of a sudden, Broward County found a bunch of votes, and all of a sudden, like 80 to 90% of them just happen to be Democrats. The same thing's happening in Arizona. Reports are saying that there's 300,000 more votes in Arizona. I don't know how this happens. I'm confused by the election process here in California. I knew that John Cox wouldn't beat Gavin Newsom. I knew that. But they literally, and Fox News did this too, not just CNN, they announced that Gavin Newsom won before they even counted 0% of the votes. So how do you know the election's over before you even show us 0% of the votes? And then somehow 4 days later, all the Democrats are miraculously winning Senate seats. It's absolutely ridiculous. But let's talk about Broward County and the evidence we do have of something being profoundly wrong there. So first off, they recently got cheated. They got caught cheating. Broward County Supervisor of Elections, Brenda Snipes, illegally destroyed ballots, a judge ruled, in the last election of Debbie Wasserman Schultz versus Tim Canova. We're going to talk about Tim Canova a lot today. He's a progressive, left-leaning person who ran independent because he was tired of the rigged system. And Bernie Sanders kind of supported him the first time. He hasn't supported him the second time. But a lot of this stuff is not even coming from Republicans. It's coming from Tim Canova, who's a left-leaning progressive. But a judge ruled that the supervisor of elections illegally destroyed ballots, literally. And she's on camera. There's a whole article I shared. She's on camera saying, "Oh, I did it by mistake." So it's admitted that in Florida, in the last election, they illegally destroyed ballots. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not a Republican RNC Donald Trump illusion like Bernie Sanders wants to say. He's the biggest liar on the planet right now. This came from Tim Canova, a progressive left-leaning person who Bernie Sanders actually supported and now pretends like doesn't exist. Really sick stuff. So that's the first case of evidence. They literally got caught illegally destroying ballots. After doing that, how in the world do you not lose your position? I mean, the whole point of being the supervisor of elections is to make sure that no illegal activity goes on. If you can't even do that, you shouldn't be that position. This is the problem. And it spans Democrat and Republican. People in politics and high-level people with a lot of money, they never get held accountable for what they do. And the stuff that they do is just as bad as this, if not worse. I'm not talking about little infractions or something. Yeah, you didn't pay your taxes and you owe money or something. I'm not talking about really sick stuff that they do. They never get held accountable. So how are they going to stop cheating and lying and stealing your money if they never get held accountable? So that's the first one. Like I said, Broward County Supervisor of Elections, Brenda Snipes, illegally destroyed ballots. A judge just ruled recently for the 2016 election, and she's still there, miraculously finding Democrat votes. Oh, who would have known? The person who rigged the last election, no, we didn't rig this one, just the last one by mistake. May 24th, 2017, in Broward County, Barrington Wisenhunt, a federal prosecutor, washed up on shore dead with blunt force trauma all over his body. This is in Hollywood, Florida. May 24th, 2017. Barrington Wisenhunt, federal prosecutor, washed up dead, I will repeat, in the ocean. Anywhere else in the world, this is the really sad part to me. If this had anything to do with Trump or the media could spin it to say Republicans did it, there would be rallies, riots, crying. I mean, look at what the media got people to get mad about when it comes to the Turkey and the Saudi Arabian journalist, the guy who died in the embassy. I'm not saying it's good, it's terrible, but people freaked out for 2 months. They're still freaking out about that a journalist got murdered in the embassy, but they don't even care that a federal prosecutor, Barrington Wisenhunt, was murdered in Hollywood, Florida, in Broward County. No one talked about it. They said, you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh, no, he just washed up on shore with blunt force trauma. Let's not look into that because it's just Broward County where stuff like this happens all the time. And nobody looked into it. Nobody investigated it. Barrington Wisenhunt was an African-American man Didn't hear Black Lives Matter talking about it. Heard very few black activists talking about it. Once again, nobody cares. This is why the people get away with whatever they're doing. I don't know who it is. I'm not starting a conspiracy theory saying I know what happened to Barrington Wisenhunt, but they got you worried about a non-existent special counsel that they created off of colluding with foreign governments and basically circle jerking their own fake information around to give themselves justification to do that. You're worried about what's going on in Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and people don't even care that a federal prosecutor washed up dead on the shore of Broward County, May 24, 2017. Rest in peace, Barrington Wisenhunt. I'm sorry that they never really looked into it and no one cares about your death. The third sketchy thing in Broward County that happened over the last couple of years, the Parkland mass shooting. Obviously a horrible event. I don't care what side of the political or gun spectrum you're on. A bunch of kids were murdered at a school in Broward County. But what makes that sketchy is not the fact that it happened. What makes it sketchy is that it was the most politicized mass shooting in United States history. I've never seen a mass shooting that was more politicized than the Parkland situation. You had an FBI agent's son, David Hogg, who, now that he's 18, maybe you could talk about him and they won't delete your channel off of existence. He's the son of an FBI agent, and that's totally fine. I'm not knocking it. There's a lot of great people who work with the FBI, I'm sure. But it was a little sketchy that he was in the closet with the camera like, oh, gun control, gun control. And then it's like all of a sudden he's a spokesperson, he's getting all these awards, he's running organizations that are starting marches all around the country, getting kids to vote. Yeah, that just seems totally normal to me. Not, but we can just ignore it because I know I'll probably get censored or deleted off the internet if I speak the truth about it. So the Parkland mass shooting was super politicized. You had a CNN town hall. This is unprecedented for any sort of situation we've ever had. And we've had a lot of tragedies, including Las Vegas, in Texas, now in California, unfortunately. None of them get politicized this strongly. A town hall where the head of the police department is there saying, gun control, it's all your fault. And then a week later, after they already milked it dry with all the Democrat politicization that they could possibly do, then we found out that the school army guard or security guard stood outside the school. Then we found out that the police department came to the shooting and people found them standing outside the school. Do you know? I mean, even in the California shooting, you had a bunch of men blocking the women so they wouldn't get shot. These weren't police officers. These weren't trained security guards. These were just normal citizens who were trying to, be a man and help the women. But somehow there's police departments standing outside of the school. They're waiting outside of the school as kids are getting murdered, blaming the NRA, blaming Republicans on CNN, and then we found out about that a week later. So everything about the Parkland mass shooting was sketchy. Not just the fact that you had a teacher saying that the person had full body armor on and looked like, and once again, this is not me saying this, there's a whole video of a teacher who watched it being like, yo, something was up here. Overall, I'm not saying this is a conspiracy theory. I'm not trying to get the Alex Jones treatment from the media. But all I'm saying is Parkland was the most politicized shooting in United States history, where they literally pushed their Democratic Party agenda for 2 weeks. Then we found out the information that said that the police department basically waited outside and the armed guard waited outside. Very interesting. And then we have 2 years of literally March for Our Rights and a Democratic Party operative, around the country to get people to vote Democrat and go for gun control. It's a little bit sketchy, I'm not going to lie. The next sketchy thing that happened in Broward County the next 2 years is something about this county stinks. I don't want to go there ever. If you live there, God bless you. I'm sure it's a really nice place. I'm not hating on it, but the mail bomber, the biggest story of the last 3 weeks until more people got murdered, Jewish people at a synagogue, people in California. Really sad, but before that, you had the mail bomber who was, ooh, I'm a big Trump supporter. Look at my big van. I have Trump stickers all over my van. Obama, George Soros, Hillary Clinton, CNN, John Brennan, basically like all the fakest people in the country somehow got this bomb that wasn't working. It was a completely fake clock and a fake bomb that they took pictures of. Like all of a sudden, of course, they have clear pictures of this totally fake bomb. Oh my goodness. And where did the return thing on the bombing go? To Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district. Oh, of course. I mean, that seems totally normal. It's like, I'm not saying it was fake. I'm sure this guy could have been real. But if you would have asked me what's the fakest thing you could possibly do, I have a hard time believing that I couldn't come up with something faker than what happened. Like that person, that person, that person, that person, that person, that person, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, fake bomb. Picture of the fake bomb that probably couldn't even make it through the post office. And then, where is the bomber from? Broward County. Of course he was found in Broward County, because what good stuff happens in Broward County? Of course the mail bomber with the big Trump, van that's got all the stickers. Like, oh man, he's got 50 stickers that are like perfectly aligned that look like a one-sheet cutout that they just put there yesterday. Broward County. Of course it is. I'm not saying it was fake. I'm not saying it's not possible. There's a bunch of psycho Trump supporters. There's a bunch of psycho Trump haters. Unfortunately, we have a mental health problem in this country where there's a lot of mentally ill people on both sides, and everybody has to do a better job of calming those people down. But yeah, that's another Broward County situation. The last one, this I don't think has anything to do with politics, but XXXTentacion, a young rapper, was murdered in Broward County. But I don't know how much relevance that has. I'm just stating. And Tim Canova recently found a video of moving ballots. People were moving ballots into a rented van just a couple days ago in Broward County. I'm going to read a Jill Stein quote. This is for everybody, but this is especially for Bernie Sanders, who for some reason, Bernie Sanders, complete coward and complete fraud. I don't know any nicer way to put it. The dude got cheated every which way by the DNC and the Democratic Party. Literally, oh my God, now he's like their biggest lapdog, and anybody who says that elections could be rigged, Bernie Sanders is mad at, even though they rigged the election against him. The dude is an absolute phony. But this is Jill Stein, leader of the Green Party. She says, something stinks in Broward. I'm paraphrasing, but she did a list. She said, still counting votes 3 days after election, sketchy. 46,000 votes after election, sketchy. People caught on tapes loading ballots onto a rented truck, pretty sketchy. And destroyed ballots, like I told you, in 2016. They admitted to do so. So even the Green Party leader, Jill Stein, who spends millions of dollars trying to recount elections apparently for Hillary Clinton, never knew she did that, but that's her thing, I guess. Even she knows that Broward County's lying. Even she knows that it's a complete fraud. They literally got caught deleting ballots or destroying ballots in 2016 for Tim Canova. And just to try to wrap up how fake Bernie Sanders is, it's just amazing. So Jill Stein, Green Party, she knows that Broward County's up to something fishy. Tim Canova was a Bernie Sanders supporter who ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in 2016. Ever since then, Bernie Sanders won't talk about the guy, pulled his support completely from Tim Canova, who's a progressive, left-leaning, more socialist type person. And Bernie Sanders has the nerve to get on Twitter today and say, ooh, the Republicans are trying to undermine our democracy. Oh my goodness, let everyone vote in Florida, blah, 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 blah. It's like the dude is so fake. And then he says, anybody else who's trying to do this? Well, anybody else would literally include Tim Canova, who you recently supported. It's not the Republican Party, it's Tim Canova that's leading a lot of these operations. The Green Party knows it. Progressives know it, like Jimmy Dore and other, progressive left-leaning, left-wing news commentators. Everyone knows something sketchy is going on in Broward County. Everybody knows except for the guy who took the blunt force of what they're doing, especially, people involved in the DNC who are handing election. They had to remove their post from CNN because they're giving questions to the debate to the other side, among many other very sketchy things in his election. But it's like the dude can't even stand up for himself, attacks his own supporters, says everybody who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in the election, he thinks it's Russian influence, like nobody who liked Bernie Sanders could like Trump. It must be Russia. It's like the dude thinks everybody's racist if they don't vote for a black socialist. Oh, you don't like socialism or Democrat liberalism? Oh, you must be racist. I mean, Bernie Sanders is just such a loser. I'm sorry, I can't think of a nicer word to put it, because he raised $180 million from his supporters, including me, didn't even stand up for himself, bought a third vacation house, literally told people to campaign for the person he stood against, and then anybody who doesn't agree with that, he literally calls Russian or racist and attacks his own supporters like Tim Canova and calls them frauds and says that they're pathological liars if you agree that something sketchy might be going on in Florida. It's just absolute insanity that he's this fake. Who is this guy really? Pull off the mask. It's like a Scooby-Doo mystery. You're going to find somebody else there because it's not the Bernie Sanders that people thought he was. So overall, what's going on in Florida? What's going on in Broward County? I have no idea. To me, it's the sketchiest, most corrupt county in the United States. When the mail bomber was from there, I was like, oh, of course he was from there. When, when Barrington Wisenhunt's dead body washed up on shore, I was like, oh yeah, no big deal, just Broward County, just Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district. I'm sure that was random. The Parkland situation, oh yeah, it's just Broward County. Yeah, I'm sure that was just spontaneously. Oh, let's have a CNN town hall. Let's do. Oh wait, now we found the evidence that we. It's like everything bad happens there. Overall, thank you, Tim Canova. Regardless of politics and policies, he seems like somebody who actually has character, and that's all you could ask for on either side is character and a sense of honesty. We want people in office. I don't care if you're left-leaning or right-leaning. I want somebody in office that can take and retain new information and change their decision and their beliefs based on the new information they retained. I don't want somebody in office that does the same thing for 50, 60 years and tries to steamroll over everybody because they want to be right so bad and they want their policy so bad. I want people who can learn and listen and adapt and grow and change and get statistics and information and, read more and listen more and be like, oh, you know what? Actually, that does make sense to me. People that could go across the table. We don't have that. We have an election process that is extremely flawed. And I will say, I was somebody who was telling Republicans and conservatives after this election, they were saying, Democrats cheated, Democrats cheated, Democrats cheated. And I said, hey, you know what, guys? It was a good election overall for Trump. He gained 3 Senate seats unless they steal 2, in Arizona and Florida. But it was a good election. He did very, very good. He did better than Clinton. He did better than Obama. He did better than virtually every president ever to only lose that many seats in the House. It always happens. He lost very few, and he gained Senate seats, which is unprecedented. Obama in 2010, I think he lost 6 Senate seats and over 50 House seats. That's like standard. Well, that's not standard. That's really bad because a lot of people didn't like Obama. But overall, I was like, the Democrats didn't cheat. Let's not be the people who cried wolf. But now that I'm seeing what's going on in Florida, now that I'm seeing what's going on in Arizona, McSally's up 50,000 votes, 100,000 votes, and then all of a sudden, oh, she's down 18 votes. We found 100,000 votes, and 90,000 of them just happen to be Democrat. Oh, we found a bunch of votes, but they're all Democrats, so it just flipped the race. Who would have thought? I mean, on what planet in a tight race do you think you're going to find 90% of the ballots going one way or the other? Anyone you find that goes more than 65-35, you can almost guarantee that it's probably not real. Yes, if it's in Democrat districts or Republican districts, that might change it. But what are elections? Like, what are we doing here? I thought the election results come in like the day after. We have new ballots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. I don't know. But I was somebody who's trying to calm people down, and I always am. But I was like, no way they cheated. But after what they're doing in Broward County, I want an investigation all over the United States. People caught in Texas for voter fraud. Maybe we need to have somebody, somebody federal who's bipartisan go to, every location in the country and make sure that they don't rig ballots. I've been saying it for a year. And anybody, I don't care what you call it, voter fraud, election fraud, this fraud. Bernie Sanders, voter fraud doesn't exist on the planet. Voter fraud is a way to make the blacks not vote. It's like, Bernie Sanders, shut up, bro. Obviously, voter fraud exists. I don't care if you call it voter fraud, election fraud, whatever you want. Obviously, you can cheat. It doesn't take rocket science to tell you could cheat, especially when you get to count the votes. Brenda Snipes destroyed ballots. It's not a conspiracy theory. No, they really do it, Bernie Sanders. They rigged the election. They've done it multiple times for the Republicans, for the Democrats. They definitely cheat. I mean, it's obvious. So who's counting the votes? If the person who's overseeing the vote counting is signing off on destroying the ballots, yes, you can call it voter fraud, election fraud, poo-poo fraud. You can call it Bernie Sanders, ice cream, Ben & Jerry's fraud. Name it whatever you want. Yes, obviously they could cheat during elections. And the people, at this point, we don't have much faith in the political process because this type of stuff happens all the time. So I want next election, we'll see, but I would like to know that the people counting the votes are the real deal. And I mean, we'll see, but this is not a good look for democracy. This is not a good look for the oligarchy. This is not a good look for the Republic. It's not a good look for Florida. It's not a good look for Arizona. It's not a good look for the United States of America. The election process is deeply flawed. You have a bunch of people in Florida that clearly, I don't even know, they need to be, looked at or monitored. That's my takeaway from it. I'm going to open up the floor, take a few questions today since I only have one thing to talk about. Thank you guys for listening. Overall, I'm not a prosecutor. I don't work for the government. I'm not a police officer. But as a citizen of the United States with a First Amendment right, Broward County sketches me out. I personally think they're cheating. And based on the evidence there and how the Democrats have acted this entire election, they lost the election to Trump. And then they blamed me. And then they blamed Bernie Sanders voters. And then they blamed progressives. And then Bernie Sanders said, if you liked me and you like Trump now, you must be Russian influence. And then they called us deplorables. And then they called us losers in our parents' basement. And then they said that Russia did it. And then they launched a whole fake, phony investigation based on a dossier that they made with foreign collusion. They colluded with a British spy to make a fake dossier that they themselves then put into the press and did all these phony things to then get justification to spy on the president and sitting, or future president of the United States, put together a whole council that they somehow have some sort of judicial power in an election that they lost. And now they're stringing it out, and freaking out, mobbing in the streets, doing all sorts of protests, because if you stop the phony election thing that they did to convince themselves that they didn't lose the election, then you're a bad Russian Nazi xenophobe and everybody needs to come attack you. This is who they are. They've showed me last election they're sore losers, they're pathological liars, they're psychotic criminals in many cases who will do anything but admit that they're wrong. They'll do anything but accept the results of an election. They're doing it in Georgia, they're doing it in Arizona, they're doing it in Florida. So in no way, shape, or form, as a normal person with a brain, do I think that they're not cheating in Florida, or they're not cheating in Georgia, or they're not cheating. All the evidence in the world, and all you have to do is turn on a television or turn on Twitter or turn on Facebook and see how they acted from 2016 till now, tells me that they will do anything under the sun to try to win these elections. So please look into it. Democrat, Republican, progressive, conservative, I would like to think that everybody would want fair elections, because if we don't have fair elections, then what are we even doing here? All right, I'll open it up to you guys.